I ruined my sister's wedding, and she still doesn't know it, because everyone thinks the wedding disaster that day was just bad luck, bad timing, a series of unfortunate events. But the truth is, none of it was accidental. I planned it, every single part, and if my sister ever finds out what I did, I'm pretty sure she'll never speak to me again. The worst part? She still hugs me every time we see each other. She still thanks me for being such a supportive sister during the whole thing. And every time she says that, I feel like the worst person alive. Because I didn't just ruin her wedding, I ruined it on purpose, and I had a reason, a really good one. But I still don't know if that makes what I did right or unforgivable. My sister Emily has always been the golden child, the kind of person everything just works out for. Perfect grades, perfect friends, perfect job, and eventually, what everyone thought was the perfect fiancé. Daniel. From the moment Emily introduced him to the family, everyone loved him. My parents adored him. Our relatives kept saying things like, "You're so lucky to have found a man like that. He's a keeper. You two are perfect together." And Emily looked happier than I'd ever seen her, like she had finally found the person she was meant to spend her life with. But something about Daniel always made me uncomfortable. I couldn't explain it at first. It was just little things. Small moments most people probably wouldn't even notice, like how he'd flirt with waitresses right in front of Emily. Not in an obvious way, just subtle enough that if you called him out, he could pretend it was harmless. Or the way his personality completely changed whenever Emily left the room. When Emily was around, he was charming, funny, attentive, the perfect fiancé. But the second she stepped away, his smile disappeared. He'd get quiet, cold, almost arrogant, like the act had dropped. And I remember thinking, which version of this guy is real? I tried telling myself I was imagining things. After all, Emily seemed happy, and who was I to ruin that? But about 4 months before the wedding, everything changed. Emily had come over to my apartment one evening to work on wedding planning, seating charts, invitations, color palettes, the usual chaos that comes with planning a big wedding. There were papers everywhere, Pinterest boards open on her laptop, coffee cups stacked on the table. She was excited, like genuinely glowing every time she talked about the future, about the house they wanted to buy, about the trips they wanted to take, about the life they were going to build together. Eventually it got late. She packed up her things and headed home. Or at least, she thought she packed everything. Because about 10 minutes after she left, I noticed something sitting on my kitchen table. Her laptop. I texted her right away. She replied saying she'd grab it the next day, so I just left it there. No big deal. Later that night, I was sitting on the couch watching TV when I heard a notification sound. At first, I ignored it. Then it happened again, and again. That little message alert sound. I looked around the room, confused. Then I realized the sound was coming from Emily's laptop. The screen lit up with a message notification from someone named Jess with a red heart. At first, I assumed it was one of Emily's friends, but the preview message made my stomach drop. It said, "Last night was amazing. When can I see you again?" I stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. Then another message came in. "I miss you already." And that's when I noticed something strange. The messages weren't addressed to Emily. They were addressed to Daniel. My heart started pounding. I knew I should have closed the laptop. It wasn't my business. But something in my gut told me to look, so I opened the conversation, and what I saw made my entire body go cold. The messages went back weeks. Flirting, photos, plans to meet at hotels, late-night conversations. And it was very clear Daniel wasn't just flirting. He was sleeping with this woman, regularly, while he was engaged to my sister. I just sat there staring at the screen. Part of me hoped it was old. Maybe something from before he met Emily. But the timestamp said otherwise. The most recent message had been sent that afternoon. The next morning, I drove straight to Emily's apartment. I barely slept that night. My mind kept replaying the messages over and over. Every screenshot, every sentence, every lie. I kept imagining what would happen when she found out. But I knew one thing. She had to know. She deserved the truth. So when she opened the door, I just handed her the laptop and told her to read the messages. At first, she looked confused. Then she started scrolling. Her expression slowly changed. Confusion, then disbelief, then anger, but not at Daniel. At me. She slammed the laptop shut and looked at me like I had just insulted her. "You went through my messages?" she asked. I tried explaining. I told her I wasn't snooping. I told her the notifications popped up. I told her I was worried about her. But she didn't want to hear it. She said I was jealous, that I'd always been jealous of her, that I was trying to sabotage her relationship because I couldn't stand seeing her happy. And before I could even process what she was saying, she told me to leave. Then she called Daniel. And apparently, he had a very convincing explanation. According to him, Jess was just an old friend who liked to joke around. Those messages didn't mean anything. It was harmless. Just stupid jokes taken out of context. And Emily believed him. Just like that. A week later, she asked me to apologize to him. I didn't apologize, but I did something worse. I decided that if Emily wasn't going to see the truth, I'd make sure she couldn't ignore it. At first, I tried doing things the normal way. I found Jess on social media. I messaged her. I told her Daniel was engaged. I expected shock, maybe anger, maybe embarrassment. Instead, she replied almost immediately. And what she said made my stomach drop. She already knew. In fact, she wasn't the only one. According to her, Daniel had been seeing multiple women during his engagement. Emily wasn't just being cheated on. She was being humiliated. And somehow, she still didn't know. That's when I made the decision. If Emily refused to listen to me, then the truth would come out another way. The wedding was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks? That was all the time I had. And I knew one thing for sure. If Emily married Daniel, she'd spend the rest of her life with someone who was lying to her. Someone who was betraying her. Someone who clearly didn't respect her. And I couldn't let that happen, even if it meant ruining the most important day of her life. So I started planning. carefully, quietly. First, I contacted Jess again. Then I contacted the other women she mentioned. It took some convincing, but eventually 3 of them agreed to help. Not because they cared about Emily, but because they were furious at Daniel. Apparently, he'd been lying to them too, telling them he was single, promising them things he had no intention of keeping. By the time we finished comparing stories, it was obvious. Daniel had been running the same scam on multiple women at once, and somehow, Emily was the only one who didn't know. So we made a plan. A simple one. We were going to let the truth reveal itself. At the wedding, in front of everyone. The wedding day arrived. Emily looked beautiful, like genuinely glowing. The kind of happiness you only see on someone who believes their life is about to begin. I remember watching her walk around the venue, greeting guests and thinking, this might be the last time she ever smiles like that. And for a moment, I almost called it off. I almost told the other women not to come. Because despite everything, she was still my sister. But then I saw Daniel, standing near the bar, laughing with his friends, completely relaxed, like he had absolutely nothing to worry about. And that's when I knew I couldn't back out. Because he didn't deserve to get away with it. The ceremony started. Everything went perfectly. The music, the vows, the rings, the applause. They were officially married. And for a brief moment, I thought maybe I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Maybe I should have stayed out of it. Maybe it wasn't my place. Then the reception began. And about 30 minutes into dinner, Jess walked into the venue, followed by the other 2 women. They weren't supposed to make a scene. The plan was simple. They would talk to Emily privately, show her the proof, let her decide what to do next. But that's not what happened, because the moment Daniel saw them, he panicked. And panic makes people do stupid things. He rushed across the room and started arguing with them. Voices got louder, guests started noticing. And before anyone could stop it, one of the women shouted something that froze the entire room. Which one of us is the real girlfriend, Daniel? The room went silent. You could hear forks hitting plates and people whispering. And Emily just stood there staring at him, completely confused. The next 10 minutes were chaos. The women started talking over each other, explaining everything, showing messages, photos, proof. Daniel tried denying it at first. Then he tried blaming them. Then he tried blaming me. Yes, me. He pointed directly at me in front of the entire room and said I'd set him up, that I was obsessed with ruining their relationship. But by then, it was too late. Emily had already seen the messages, and the look on her face, I'll never forget it. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even sadness. It was pure shock, like her entire world had just cracked open. She quietly took off her wedding ring, placed it on the table, and walked out of the reception. The wedding ended about 20 minutes later. Guests left awkwardly. My parents were furious. Daniel disappeared, and Emily didn't speak to anyone for days. But here's the strange part. No one ever connected it back to me. Everyone assumed the women just found out about the wedding and showed up. They blamed Daniel. They blamed the chaos. But they never blamed me, not even Emily. A few months later, she actually thanked me. She said if Daniel had been that sloppy with cheating before the wedding, he probably would have been worse after. She said maybe everything happened for a reason. Maybe she got lucky. And every time she says something like that, I just nod. I smile. I pretend everything happened naturally. But deep down, I know the truth. Her wedding didn't fall apart because of fate, or bad timing, or coincidence. It fell apart because I made sure it did. And to this day, my sister still has no idea.